My 6-year-old son Beckett stood in our backyard holding his grandmother's phone like a weapon, while 30 birthday guests watched in stunned silence. What he was about to reveal would destroy our family forever. Let me back up, because you need to understand who we all were before that moment shattered everything. I'm Deanna, 32 years old, and I teach 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary here in Portland. Most people know me as the mom who volunteers for every school event, the one who brings homemade cookies to PTA meetings and actually reads all those permission slips. I married Garrett 8 years ago, right after I found out I was pregnant with Beckett. Yes, we did things backwards according to some people, and trust me, I've been reminded of that fact every single day since. Garrett is 34, works as a software engineer for a tech startup downtown, and has this habit of disappearing into his office whenever conflict arises. He's brilliant with computers, but somehow becomes completely mute when his mother enters a room. 6 feet tall, former college basketball player, reduced to a silent shadow by a 5'2" woman in pearls. Then there's Beckett, my whole world turning 6, on what should have been the happiest day of his young life. He's quiet, always has been, but his mind never stops working. While other kids his age are running around screaming about superheroes, Beckett sits in corners reading books about dinosaurs, memorizing their names, their eating habits, which period they lived in. His teachers call him an old soul. His grandmother called him something else entirely. Speaking of which, let me introduce you to Nadine, my mother-in-law, 58 years old, retired bank manager who dresses like she's attending a country club luncheon, even for backyard barbecues. She has this way of smiling that never reaches her eyes, and she speaks in this honeyed voice that sounds sweet until you actually listen to the words. She arrived at our house that morning wearing a cream-colored suit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, looking like she'd stepped out of a Southern Living magazine. Her husband Dennis, 60 years old, owns a small accounting firm and has perfected the art of being present but invisible. He's the kind of man who reads newspapers at family dinners and suddenly needs to check something in his car whenever his wife starts one of her lectures about proper behavior and family values. That morning, our backyard looked like a dinosaur paradise. I'd spent 3 days transforming it for Beckett's birthday party. There were inflatable T-Rexes by the fence, a fossil dig sandbox I'd filled with plastic bones, green streamers hanging from every tree to look like vines. The picnic tables were covered with dinosaur tablecloths, and each place setting had a little toy dinosaur next to the plate. I'd even made volcanic punch that bubbled with dry ice. But the centerpiece, the thing I was most proud of, was the cake. 3 tiers of chocolate and vanilla, covered in green frosting scales I'd applied one by one with a special piping tip I'd bought just for this occasion. The T-Rex on top had taken me 4 hours to sculpt from modeling chocolate, and its eyes were made from candies I'd special ordered online because they had to be exactly the right shade of yellow. Parents had started arriving with their kids around noon. The Johnsons from across the street, the Patel family from Beckett's class, my neighbor, Gloria, who'd become like a grandmother to Beckett since my own mother lived in Florida. Kids ran through the yard shrieking with joy, parents clustered in small groups holding red Solo cups of lemonade, and everything was perfect. That's when Nadine decided to destroy it all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to know that this wasn't just about a cake or a birthday party. This was about years of small cruelties, backhanded compliments, and whispered judgments that had been building to this moment. This was about a woman who believed she was morally superior to everyone around her, about to learn that sometimes the people we underestimate the most are the ones who see everything. My son, my quiet, dinosaur-loving 6-year-old son, was about to bring down the woman who'd terrorized our family for years. And he was going to do it with nothing more than a phone and a truth she never thought anyone would discover. The morning started perfectly. I woke up at 6 to find Beckett already sitting at the foot of our bed, wearing his dinosaur pajamas and practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom, Dad, it's today! My birthday is today!" He launched himself between us, and Garrett scooped him up, making pterodactyl screeching sounds that had Beckett giggling uncontrollably. 6 years old, I said, kissing his forehead. "You're getting so big." "Big enough to have a real paleontologist kit?" he asked hopefully. "We'll have to see what presents you get at the party," Garrett winked at me. We'd bought him the advanced fossil excavation kit he'd been eyeing at the Science Museum for months. By 8 o'clock, I was in the backyard setting up while Garrett handled breakfast. The October air was crisp but sunny. Perfect party weather. I'd been planning this day for 3 months, determined to give Beckett the kind of birthday I'd only dreamed of as a kid. My own childhood birthdays were quiet affairs, just my parents and me around our kitchen table with a store-bought cake. They did their best with what they had, but I wanted more for Beckett. "Deanna, the dinosaurs are listing to the left," Nadine's voice cut through my thoughts. She'd arrived early, as always, dressed like she was attending a garden party at the governor's mansion rather than a 6-year-old's birthday. Dennis followed behind her, carrying a perfectly wrapped present with a bow so elaborate it looked professional. "Good morning to you too, Nadine," I said, adjusting the inflatable T-Rex she'd mentioned. She surveyed the backyard with that particular expression she reserved for my efforts. "This seems rather excessive for a children's party. When Garrett was young, we simply had cake in the dining room. Children don't need all this stimulation." "Kids today expect more interactive experiences," I replied, hanging another string of lights. "Besides, Beckett loves dinosaurs." "Yes, well, interests change. Garrett loved trains at that age, but we didn't turn our home into Grand Central Station." She ran a manicured finger along the picnic table, checking for dust that didn't exist. Dennis finally spoke up. "Looks nice, Deanna. Beckett will love it." Nadine shot him a look that could freeze water. "Dennis, why don't you help Garrett with something inside?" He disappeared without another word, a pattern I'd watched repeat for 8 years. "You know," Nadine continued, settling into a chair like a queen on her throne, "I've been thinking about Beckett's future. Public school is fine for now, but have you considered Whitmore Academy for middle school? Of course. They have certain standards. Traditional families, married before children, that sort of thing." There it was, the daily reminder that I'd gotten pregnant before marriage, that Beckett was conceived out of wedlock, as she loved to phrase it when she thought I wasn't listening. "Beckett's only 6, Nadine. Middle school is years away." "It's never too early to think about reputation, dear. These things follow children. I'm only thinking of what's best for him." I bit my tongue and focused on arranging the dinosaur centerpieces. Garrett emerged with Beckett, who was now in his paleontologist costume, complete with vest, hat, and toy binoculars. "Grandma!" Beckett ran to her with arms open. She accepted his hug stiffly, immediately straightening his costume afterward. "You're wrinkling your outfit, child. Stand properly." "Mom, please," Garrett said quietly. "It's his birthday." "Which is exactly why he should learn to present himself well. Appearances matter, Garrett. I tried to teach you that, though it seems the lesson didn't quite stick." Her eyes flicked to me at that last part. By 11:30, the transformation was complete. The backyard looked like a scene from Jurassic Park. I'd even set up speakers to play jungle sounds and occasional dinosaur roars. Beckett helped me put the finishing touches on the fossil dig station, carefully burying plastic bones in the sandbox. "Mom, this is amazing," he said, his eyes shining. "It's just like a real dig site." "You deserve an amazing party, baby. Even Tommy Martinez is coming, and he never comes to parties." I smiled, knowing Tommy's mom had RSVP'd specifically because she'd heard about all the activities I'd planned. Other parents had been texting me all week, excited about the party. It felt good to be the mom who threw the party everyone wanted to attend. Nadine watched. From her chair, occasionally making comments to Dennis about overindulgence and setting unrealistic expectations. But I'd learned to tune her out. This day was about Beckett, not her opinions. What I didn't know was that she'd already decided this party needed to be taught a lesson about her version of morality, and she was just waiting for the right moment to make her point. By 1 o'clock, the party was in full swing. 30 kids ran through our backyard like a pack of happy velociraptors, their faces painted with dinosaur designs courtesy of Gloria's artistic daughter. Parents clustered in groups, laughing and chatting while keeping one eye on their children. The fossil dig was a massive hit, with kids squealing every time they uncovered a plastic bone. Even the parents were getting involved, helping their children brush sand off their discoveries like real archaeologists. "Mrs. Deanna, look what I found!" Tommy Martinez held up a plastic T-Rex skull triumphantly. "Can I keep it?" "Of course you can, Tommy. Every paleontologist keeps their best discoveries. Garrett manned the grill, flipping hamburgers and hot dogs while chatting with other dads about the Blazers season. He looked relaxed for once, away from his mother's constant scrutiny. Dennis had positioned himself by the cooler, offering drinks to parents and making small talk about tax season. Nadine remained in her chair like a general surveying a battlefield, occasionally calling Dennis over to whisper something that made him look increasingly uncomfortable. At 1:30, it was time for the cake. I went inside to get my masterpiece from the kitchen. 3 layers of absolute perfection sat on my best cake stand. The T-Rex on top seemed to roar triumphantly, its chocolate scales gleaming in the afternoon sun. I'd even used edible gold dust on the claws to make them shimmer. "Everybody gather round!" I called out, carrying the cake carefully. "Time to sing Happy Birthday!" The kids abandoned their activities and rushed to the picnic table. Parents pulled out phones to record. Beckett's face lit up when he saw the cake. "Mom, it's perfect. It looks just like Blue from the movies." He bounced on his toes with excitement. Everyone started singing. 30 voices joined together, while Beckett stood at the head of the table, his cheeks pink with joy. I set the cake in front of him, my heart full watching his happiness. That's when Nadine stood up. She moved with deliberate purpose, pushing past Gloria, who was still singing. Without a word, she grabbed my cake stand with both hands. "Nadine, what are you doing?" My voice came out shocked, confused. She didn't answer. She walked straight to our large outdoor trash can, lifted the lid, and dropped the entire cake inside. The sound it made hitting the bottom was like a punch to my stomach. Green frosting splattered against the black plastic. My beautiful T-Rex shattered. The singing stopped instantly. The entire backyard fell silent except for the jungle sound still playing from the speakers, which now seemed absurdly out of place. "Bastard children don't deserve parties," Nadine announced, her voice carrying across the yard like a whip crack. She turned to face the stunned crowd, her chin raised defiantly. "This child was conceived in sin, before marriage. Why should we celebrate that? Someone needs to teach this family about dignity and proper values." I heard several parents gasp. Mrs. Patel covered her daughter's ears. Tommy's mom pulled him closer to her side. Beckett's face crumpled in confusion. "Grandma, why did you throw away my cake?" "Because some things are more important than cake, child. Like morality, like doing things in the proper order. Your parents should have thought about that before bringing you into this world the way they did." My body shook with rage. "How dare you? This is my son's birthday party." Yes, a party celebrating a child who shouldn't exist, at least not yet. If your parents, she looked directly at me, had any self-control or decency, they would have waited until after marriage. But no, you trapped my son with your pregnancy, forced him into a rushed wedding, and now we're all supposed to pretend this is normal? "Mom, stop," Garrett said, but his voice was barely above a whisper. He stood frozen by the grill, spatula still in hand, looking like a scared little boy instead of a 34-year-old man. "Garrett," I looked at him desperately, "say something. Defend your son." He opened his mouth, closed it, then just stared at his feet. "That's what I thought," Nadine said triumphantly. "Even he knows I'm right. Deep down, he's always known this was wrong." Gloria stepped forward. "Nadine, this is cruel. He's just a little boy." "He's a reminder of sin," Nadine shot back, "and I won't stand here pretending otherwise." Dennis shifted uncomfortably but remained silent, as he always did when his wife went on one of her tirades. The other parents began whispering among themselves, some already gathering their children to leave. Beckett stood perfectly still, tears rolling down his cheeks, his dinosaur costume suddenly seeming too big for his small body. The joy from moments before had been replaced with a confusion so profound it broke my heart. I felt rage building in my chest like a volcano about to erupt. My hands clenched into fists and I took a step toward Nadine, ready to say every single thing I'd held back for 8 years. But before I could speak, something extraordinary happened. Beckett wiped his tears with the back of his hand and started walking toward his grandmother. His little dinosaur costume tail dragged behind him on the grass. Every eye in that backyard followed this small boy as he crossed what felt like miles of lawn toward the woman who'd just destroyed his birthday. "Beckett, honey, come here," I called, worried about what she might say to him next. But he kept walking, his steps, deliberate and calm. When he reached Nadine, he looked up at her with those big brown eyes that usually melted hearts. Not hers, though. She stared down at him with cold indifference. "Grandma?" he said in his clear, small voice. "You dropped your phone earlier when you were sitting in the chair. I picked it up for you." She barely glanced at him. "Put it on the table, child, and stop crying. Boys don't cry." But Beckett didn't move toward the table. Instead, he held the phone up higher, right where she could see it. It was unlocked when I found it. There was a video playing. Something in his tone made everyone lean in closer. The parents who'd been heading for the gate stopped. Even Garrett looked up from his feet. "What video?" Nadine's voice carried the first hint of uncertainty I'd ever heard from her. "The one from last Tuesday. You were in a room I don't recognize talking to someone about Daddy." The color began draining from Nadine's face. "Give me that phone right now, Beckett." "You said bad children don't deserve parties," Beckett continued, his voice growing stronger. "You called me a bastard. Mrs. Peterson taught us that word at Sunday school. She said it's what mean people call children when they want to hurt them." Gloria nodded approvingly from where she stood. Other parents were recording now, sensing something significant was happening. "But in the video, Grandma, you're doing something bad too. You're in that room with someone who isn't Grandpa and you're saying mean things about him and Daddy." Dennis stepped forward for the first time. "What video, Beckett?" "What are you talking about?" Nadine lunged forward. "He's lying." "Children make up stories. Give me that phone this instant." But Beckett stepped backward, just out of her reach. "I'm not lying. You always say lying is a sin, Grandma. So is what you're doing in this video a sin too?" "You little brat!" Nadine's composed mask finally cracked completely. "How dare you speak to me that way?" "Mom, what is he talking about?" Garrett had found his voice at last, moving closer to his son. Beckett looked at his father. "Daddy, Grandma has been going to hotels with someone named Roger. She talks about you in the video. She says mean things." The name Roger hit Dennis like a physical blow. His face went white, then red. "Roger? Roger Whitman? From the country club?" Nadine spun toward her husband. "Dennis, don't listen to this child. He's making things up for attention." "Am I?" Beckett asked. "Then why did you say in the video that you took money from Daddy's college fund? You said $20,000 went to trips with Roger instead of Daddy's education." Garrett's spatula clattered to the ground. "My college fund? You told me it was lost in the market crash. That's why you had to take out all those student loans," I said, the pieces suddenly clicking together. "We're still paying them off. You said your parents couldn't help because they'd lost everything in bad investments." Dennis's hands were shaking now. "Tuesday, you were at a church retreat. You showed me the brochure. You sent me pictures from the chapel." "Those were from my phone," Beckett said quietly. "But there are other pictures too, Grandpa. Pictures from the same day that aren't at a church." The entire party had formed a circle around us now. Nobody was leaving anymore. This was the kind of drama people would talk about for years, but more importantly, every parent there was witnessing Nadine's cruelty being exposed in real time. "Should I show them the video, Grandma?" Beckett asked. "You said we should always tell the truth. You said secrets and lies are what bad people do. But you've been keeping secrets, haven't you?" Nadine's face had gone from pale to bright red. Her perfect composure, the thing she valued above all else, was crumbling in front of the very people she'd always tried to impress. The moral high ground she'd stood on for so long was collapsing beneath her feet, and a 6-year-old boy in a dinosaur costume was the one pulling it down. Nadine made one more desperate lunge for the phone, but Beckett jumped backward and his thumb hit the play button. Suddenly, her voice filled the backyard, crystal clear from the phone's speaker, competing with the still-playing jungle sounds. "Roger, I can't keep doing this. Dennis is getting suspicious about the credit card charges. But God, when I'm with you, I feel alive again. You make me feel like I'm not just some dried-up banker's wife pretending to care about charity galas and church committees." The video showed Nadine in what was clearly a hotel room, sitting on the edge of a bed, talking to someone off-camera. She was wearing a red dress none of us had ever seen her in, her hair down instead of in its usual perfect bun. The timestamp read Tuesday, October 15th, 2:47 p.m., exactly when she was supposedly at the church retreat. Dennis stepped closer, his face a mixture of disbelief and growing rage. "Let me see that." Beckett handed him the phone without hesitation. The video continued playing. "Garrett would die if he knew about us," Nadine's recorded voice continued. "He'd probably have one of his little anxiety attacks. $20,000 from his college fund, and he still believes it was lost in investments. He's always been weak, just like his father. At least with you, Roger. I have a real man, someone who understands what I sacrificed staying in this pathetic marriage." "You told me you loved me," Dennis said quietly, his voice breaking. "Every day for 35 years. The real Nadine tried to grab the phone from Dennis, but he held it high above his head, something I'd never seen him do before. The video kept playing. "Dennis bores me to tears. Do you know he actually thinks I enjoy those stupid fishing trips? I spend every vacation dreaming of being somewhere else, with someone else, with you. The money I've moved from his business. Account will cover our trip to Paris next month. He never checks the statements anyway." Garrett stepped forward now, his face hard. "You stole from Dad's business, too." "It's not stealing when you're married," Nadine snapped, her desperation showing. "That money is half mine." "Actually," Dennis said, his accountant brain taking over even in this moment, "embezzlement is embezzlement regardless of marital status, especially when you forge signatures on withdrawals." The video had more to reveal. "The best part is how I've convinced everyone I'm this moral, upstanding woman. I threw a fit about Garrett marrying that girl after she got pregnant, and meanwhile I've been cheating for 3 years. But appearance is everything, Roger. As long as everyone thinks you're good, that's all that matters." Roger's voice finally came from off camera. "What about your grandson's birthday next week? You're still going?" "Oh, I have to. It would look strange if I didn't. But trust me, I'll find a way to remind everyone that the child is a product of sin. It helps deflect from my own sins when I point out others' moral failings." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The irony was so perfect, so complete. "You planned this. You were always going to ruin his party to make yourself feel better about your affair." The assembled parents were recording everything now. Mrs. Patel had her phone out, live streaming to Facebook. Tommy's mom was texting rapidly. This would be all over the neighborhood by dinner. "Turn it off!" Nadine shrieked. "Dennis, make him turn it off!" But Dennis was done taking orders. 3 years? 3 years of lies? He looked around the backyard at all the witnesses. "She made me sell my father's watch collection to cover what I thought were investment losses. That collection was supposed to go to Garrett." "Grandpa, I'm sorry," Beckett said softly. "I didn't mean to make you sad." Dennis knelt down and pulled Beckett into a hug, the first real hug I'd ever seen him give his grandson. "You didn't make me sad, buddy. You told the truth. That's what brave boys do." Gloria stepped forward with perfect timing, pulling a sheet cake from a cooler near the fence. "Well, would you look at that? I brought a backup cake just in case. Learned that trick after the infamous birthday piñata disaster of 2018. She set it on the table. "Who wants to try again with happy birthday?" "Wait," Nadine said, her voice now shrill. "You're all just going to pretend this didn't happen. This child violated my privacy. He went through my phone." "Like you violated my son's birthday?" I shot back. "Like you violated your marriage vows? Like you violated your family's trust?" Parents began to deliberately turn their backs on Nadine, facing the table where Gloria was lighting 6 candles on the backup cake. One by one, they started singing Happy Birthday again, louder this time, drowning out Nadine's protests. Beckett stood between Dennis and me, his small face breaking into a smile as 30 voices sang just for him. Garrett finally moved, walking over to stand with his family instead of hiding by the grill. He put his hand on Beckett's shoulder, and for the first time in 8 years, we looked like a united family. Nadine stood alone in the middle of the yard, her perfect outfit somehow looking ridiculous now, like a costume that didn't fit anymore. She watched her family choose each other over her, and for once, she had absolutely nothing to say. Dennis filed for divorce the next week. He hired the best lawyer in Portland, someone who specialized in financial fraud within marriages. Turns out Nadine had stolen close to $60,000 over 3 years, funding her affair while Dennis worked 70-hour weeks to cover what he thought were bad investments. The country club revoked her membership after the video went viral in our community. Roger Whitman disappeared from her life the moment scandal touched his reputation. Garrett finally went to therapy to deal with his mother's lifetime of manipulation. During our third couples session, he broke down completely. "I've been scared of her my whole life," he admitted. "She controlled everything with guilt and shame. When Beckett stood up to her, this tiny kid in a dinosaur costume, facing down a dragon, it changed something in me. My 6-year-old son had more courage than I'd ever had." The therapy helped us both understand how Nadine had weaponized moral superiority to hide her own failings. Every cruel comment about our improper relationship had been projection, deflecting attention from her own sins. Our therapist called it moral narcissism, using righteousness as a shield while living a completely different life in secret. Nadine tried to contact us repeatedly over the following months. She left voicemails about forgiveness and family values, seemingly oblivious to the irony. She sent letters quoting Bible verses about honoring thy mother, forgetting all those verses about truthfulness and fidelity. Each message got more desperate as she realized her power was gone forever. She moved to Oregon to live with her sister, who was the only family member still speaking to her. The last I heard from Dennis, she was working as a bookkeeper for a small firm, a massive step down from her former status. Roger had reconciled with his wife and threatened Nadine with a restraining order if she contacted him again. But the most profound change was in Beckett. That night, as I tucked him into his dinosaur-themed bed, he asked me something that stopped my heart. "Mom, did I do something bad showing that video?" I sat on his bed, choosing my words carefully. "You stood up to someone who was being cruel. That took incredible courage." She said I was a bastard. What does that really mean? It's an ugly word some people use when they're trying to hurt others. But you know what? You're not any bad word anyone calls you. You're Beckett, the bravest 6-year-old paleontologist I know, who stood up to a bully and protected his family. Like when the little dinosaurs worked together to defeat the big mean one. Exactly like that, baby. Dennis became the grandfather Beckett deserved. He came to every school play, every soccer game, every science fair. 6 months after the party, he helped us build an elaborate treehouse in the backyard, something Nadine had forbidden when Garrett was young. While hammering boards, he told me, "That woman stole 35 years of my life, but she won't steal another day. And she definitely won't steal my grandson's childhood." He also established a college fund for Beckett with the money recovered from Nadine's theft, making sure it was in a trust she could never touch. "This boy's future is secure," he promised. "No one will ever steal from him again." The birthday party video became legendary in our neighborhood. 3 different parents had recorded the whole confrontation, and it spread through our community like wildfire. But instead of being embarrassed, we became known as the family who stood up to a bully. Parents would stop me at school, pick up to say how inspiring Beckett's courage had been. Gloria threw Beckett a redo party 2 weeks later with all the same kids. This time, nobody threw the cake in the trash. Parents contributed to make it even bigger than the original party. There was a bouncy house, a real paleontologist from the Natural History Museum came to speak, and someone even arranged for a dinosaur mascot. It was the neighborhood's way of showing that good people stand together against cruelty. Every year on Beckett's birthday, I still make an elaborate cake. Dennis always makes the same joke. "Nobody better throw this one in the trash." We all laugh, because we can now. The wound has healed into a story of triumph. Last week was Beckett's 9th birthday. As I brought out another dinosaur cake, he stood up and said, "Before we eat cake, I want to thank everyone for being here. 3 years ago, someone tried to ruin my birthday by being mean, but all of you helped make it better. That's when I learned that chosen family is sometimes stronger than blood family." Dennis wiped his eyes. Garrett pulled Beckett close, and I realized that Nadine, in trying to destroy our celebration, had actually given us the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that we were strong enough to stand up for ourselves and each other. We survived our dragon, and we came out stronger. Sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth, and sometimes a 6-year-old boy can save his entire family just by being brave enough to tell it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that standing up to bullies is always worth it, no matter how scary it seems. Comment below if you've ever had to stand up to a toxic family member, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. Thank you for listening to our story.